Thank you everybody for joining me. Today I am going to go over stopping stigma and using respectful language. I'm a self-advocate. My diagnoses are nonverbal learning disability, ADHD, and autism. I wasn't diagnosed until 21 years old, but we'll get back to that. I have been through public school special education system, private therapies of many types, and a residential therapeutic program. I have experienced a lot of disheartening situations, including bullying, being misunderstood, exclusion, and discrimination. The above experiences have been motivated me to turn these negative experiences into advocacy to educate people and normalize disability while trying to improve legislation and funding for people with disabilities. I am a Partners in Policymaking Illinois Class 4 graduate. This class covers core values, best practices in all services, and how to make policy change in the state of Illinois, which provides resources federally and statewide to support people with disabilities to become valued, contributing, and fully included members of the community. Here's my presentation overview. I will be going over disability is not a bad word, autism spectrum, autism diversity, autism masking, autism diagnosis categories, person first versus identity first language, and nonverbal versus non-speaking. Disability is not a bad word. In quotes, I have, having a disability is not something to be ashamed of. And such euphemisms deny the existence of disability and reinforce the stigma surrounding disability rather than embracing it as a valued aspect of diversity. Disability is not a dirty word. These words actually diminish and erase disability from the picture, end quote. That quote was written by Anjali Forber Pratt. That is her picture to the right. And she is part of the director of National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research. She's also a part of the Administration for Community Living and U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. This quote was taken by a Vanderbilt University article in Rehabilitation Psychology. So euphemisms are differently abled, physically challenged, special needs, or handicapable. And these words are not useful. I personally do not like the word special needs because I don't have special needs. I just have needs like anybody else in the world. Disability is inclusive and intersects with all other demographics of race, religion, gender, age, socioeconomic status, and political party. So what does the autism spectrum look like? Well, everybody believes the autism spectrum is a straight line, just like the picture, that goes from less autistic on the left and more autistic on the right. But the autism spectrum is actually a circle, and everyone looks completely different on this circle. I am represented in my autism on the right. Graph to the right is a pie chart, and each pie chart or slices of the pie has different characteristics of autism. Some of them are fixations, abnormal and flat speech, noise sensitivity, social difficulty, anxiety, abnormal posture, poor eye contact, tics and fidgets, aggression, and depression. So as you can see, there are some parts of the chart that are more colored in than others, and those are the characteristics that I show very often for my autism. So for fixations, I personally love paranormal activity, and I very much aside from doing advocacy work. I'm always reading on that or watching videos or something. I learned quickly people don't really love paranormal activity all the time, but that is my fixation. Um, so yeah, that was kind of interesting, I thought. And I was wondering, does anybody have any examples of maybe some other fixations people might have? Maybe you know a loved one, or maybe you are autistic yourself and have some fixations that you'd like to share. I would love to hear about them. Please feel free to put them in the chat. So here are some more examples of how autism looks like. On the right side of the page, there are two pie graphs showing what the spectrum looks like for two different people. You can kind of see some similarities of aggression, depression, and fixations, and differences like poor eye contact, anxiety, and social difficulties. It's really cool because if you would like to see how your characteristics look on a pie chart, you can go to www.idrlabs.com/autism spectrum/test.php. And this will have a couple of questions, and you can go through the questions and it will show you what your spectrum looks like on the circle, which is pretty cool.
Kaela, this is Christine. Yes. And we did have one of our participants who shared that my daughter is fixated on Disney princesses.
Oh, I love Disney. That's pretty cool. That's a really cool fixation to have, honestly. And we call fixations special interest in the autism world. So that's really cool. Thank you for sharing. So I'm going to talk about autism diversity. This slide, this video has a trigger warning just for a slur word and mention of some mental health difficulties. With that said, if these things bother you, I'm going to ask that you mute the video. It will only be 3 minutes long. So I will show you what autism diversity looks like.
Kaela, this is Christine again. I am not hearing any sound on my end.
Okay. Let me look into this. Hold on. I try that. Can you hear anything now?
Yes, we can hear now.
Perfect. Thank you.
After I was diagnosed, I don't think I really understood what having autism meant. It was hard. I had adults that would help me. I knew I was different and I knew that I needed them, but I didn't know why.
My son more than ever wants to go to the military. All he does is train. You can't have autism. So how should we gear him into having a successful future without telling him that he can't do something because he was born different?
Around the time I was 23, I came across a traits list, and I just knew it was me, but I still wanted to seek a professional diagnosis.
It costs $5,000 to $8,000 on average to get an autism diagnosis.
The neurologist diagnosed Misha in about 20 minutes and then said that it's a lifelong condition. We don't know what the limits are. We don't know what the causes are. We have no cures. Have a nice day.
The system is wrong, and it makes me very angry.
He had blurted out in class that he wanted to kill himself. It scared me so much. My son's a sweet, loving, kind, gentle being. I don't want you to ever feel like that. Do you understand me?
Yes.
Okay.
Just doing my best, trying to get through day by day.
This is what we really need to communicate.
I feel thirsty and
You're
tired.
thirsty and tired. Okay, honey.
I think one of the common misconceptions about autism is that you don't like people.
A story on the front page of our local newspaper reported how the principal at my high school told a staff member, The retard can't be valedictorian.
I love you. I love you too. Once I really understood what autism meant, it was easier because then I could find my community.
In your commencement address, you bring up Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, about gratitude, about life.
About sharing your last crust of bread. That's what it means to be human.
Wow. Can I give you a hug? You are such a beautiful soul.
This is about them tapping into their own inspiration, using art to make sense of their world.
You can hear music and then you can just play it?
And I can just play it, yes.
How did you come to a place of peace with me as your parent being autistic? Oh, you haven't?
My message to any girl, any boy struggling with autism is that it is your superpower. Embrace it.
Learning from all these autistic people on this journey has made me realize that I feel a part of something.
All right. Thank you for watching. As you can see, the diversity in the autism spectrum is so wide. We say the saying in our community that goes, if you've met one person with autism, you have met one person with autism, because every person with autism is different. Autistic masking. Masking is where a person who is autistic hides their autistic traits and characteristics. We are going to have a 3-minute video on this that will explain this in more detail.
Hey, I'm Orion Kelly, that autistic guy, and this is Autistic Masking in 3 minutes. Autistic masking is basically the act of camouflaging, suppressing, hiding our true autistic selves from the outside world. In other words, we're masking, we're suppressing what's happening inside us. So we're presenting a different look that's potentially more comforting to the outside world, to the neurotypical non-autistic world. So in essence, masking is the act of suppressing our true autistic features, traits. So trying not to stim in public. Stimming for autistic people is used to regulate themselves, or if we don't, there's a good chance we could get dysregulated, potentially melt down. That could lead to burnout, but we force ourselves to try and not stim in public. I force myself sometimes to not get too excited or animated about talking about my special interests when people are trying to have a conversation with me. That's another pretty obvious thing you're trying to suppress. You also just try to imitate people around you, use their cues, and not that you kind of see them, but you're trying to copy what they're doing and how they're talking and acting. And yeah, so doing that is masking, just being ourselves. But why? Why mask? Autistic people mask to fit in. Autistic people mask to be accepted, right? Autistic people mask so they can feel a part of a neurotypical world. Autistic masking is a lifetime of hiding our true autistic traits, our true autistic selves from the world in an effort to fit in, to make them feel comfortable. Autistic people can mask just to make friends, right? Autistic people might go on a date or meet friends and not even mention they're autistic. They're masking their true selves and their identity, choosing not to disclose just so they may get a friend. They may find a partner. And then they've got to maintain that. Autistic people, on the other hand, may choose to mask in the workplace so they don't get HR slapped. Or autistic people may mask just to get a job interview, just to get a job. Keeping it is a whole nother issue. And after all that masking, after a lifetime of hiding your true self, you still fail. The long-term detrimental effects of autistic masking on an autistic person are profound. They impact our mental health, our quality of life, and it all comes down to the simple fact that it's the only way we can get any type of acceptance. Autistic people masking isn't a preference. Our preference is for the world to just accept us for who we are, understand we're different, and allow us to be our true, authentic selves.
Thank you for watching that with me. So autistic masking is very, very common in girls. And this is because we mimic other people around us to fit in. So for me, I was diagnosed with autism when I was 21. And a lot of the reason for that was also partially coming down to mimicking. I could make eye contact. And since I could make eye contact with people, they were kind of saying, you're not autistic, which was very, very exhausting when we do it. There are days where, after I come home from work, I will just, go down in my room and just hang out for a bit, because it's very tiring. Current autism diagnosis categories. So autism is broken down into 3 categories in the DSM-TR5, which with an extra paragraph at the end saying female or male LGBTQA+ and people of color need to be taken into consideration during diagnosis. So the autism autism diagnosis is broken down into 3 categories. The first one is autism level 1, low support needs, autism level 2, medium support needs, and autism level 3, high support needs. If you would like more information about how autism is diagnosed and the 3 levels, there is a website down below that you can get more information upon that. Support needs and respectful language. Please do not use the term high or low functioning, profound, and severe. Please use the terms high support needs, medium support needs, and low support needs. Then get into more detail. So I'm going to use myself as an example. Kaela has low support needs. Kaela is very good at using the microwave and toaster, but Kaela needs some help using the stove as the flames and popping of oils give Kaela anxiety. Person first language. Federal law, the Person First Respectful Language Modernization Act of 2006, and the ADA comes from history where the government did not recognize people with disabilities as actual people, which led to the People First movement of 1970. Person first language is putting the person before the disability in order to prevent the receiver defining the person, as their diagnosis. So, for example, Sally has autism. She has autism. Or for personal preference, you can say, I have autism. Medical professionals, caregivers, and parents typically use person first language. Family members, or this is what they were told since diagnosis, or they just truly prefer it. The move away from person first began by Ari Neiman when he founded the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network in November of 2006. Identity first language. Identity first language is preferred by most of the autistic community, including myself. Identity first for the person. So here's an example. Kaela is autistic. She is autistic. Or for myself, I would say, I am autistic. Why do I prefer it this way? Autism is a part of me, and I can't walk away from it. It affects all parts of my life all the time. So I was explaining to my mom one day when we were driving why I use identity first language. And I said, well, at the end of the day, I can't just take off my autism, put it on a hook, and walk away like you could a coat or a backpack. So more, if you take away anything, I hope you learn that people use and ask, please use and ask what each person prefers when talking to autistic people or people with autism. I also want to add here two things. The first one is that the blind and deaf community has already transitioned to using identity first language. They say, you know, a deaf person or blind person, or I am blind or I am deaf, which I think was interesting. Also, on identity first language, this slide, I did capitalize autistic in certain areas because the autism community who prefers identity first language sees autism partly as a culture, and with that, like identity, and they prefer it to be capitalized. So identity versus person first language, which was a survey and by the Organization of Autism Research, or for short, or conducted a language survey on person first versus identity first language. The link is down below if you would like to look at that further. Of the 1,072 respondents, there was an overwhelmingly majority preferred the use of identity first language. In response of the survey, OR has decided to adopt identity first language as their default. Moving forward, when referring to autistic people in general, they will use identity first language. This is part of the survey. It's at 81.4% of respondents prefer identity first language. 76.4% said that they were more likely to use resources that use identity first language. 88.1% referred to themselves or their loved ones as autistic or an autistic person. Out of 1,072 respondents, for self-advocates, there was 807. Parents, there was 169 of them. Siblings and relatives were 137 people, and autism professionals was 71, and educators were 61 people. Here are some of the responses of autistic people and what they said. They said, when a publication uses the word autistic, I feel seen and accepted. My autism is not an accessory that I can't set aside. It is not something external that has latched onto me. It is not an illness or disease I have caught. It is a fundamental, inseparable part of me and who I am. And the last one says, I use them interchangeably, sometimes, and don't personally take offense to either. However, with autism, I try to use identity first because that's what the neurodivergent community seems to prefer. Family and educator response first said, in quote, I take my lead from the community I claim to support, the autistic community, with so many of my autistic friends, loved ones, and mentors indicating that they view autism as a core part of who they are and that identity first language is their preference. I want to honor their feelings. Somebody else said, it helps increase acceptance. Autism is part of the person and adds to their strengths and weaknesses. By disassociating, for example, person with autism, it implicitly attaches some stigma. Another person said, autism is not an accessory that can be set down. It compromises the very nature of autistic people. Nonverbal or non-speaking, what's the preference? This terminology is common in the autism community and disability community in general. Nonverbal is an outdated term. The thought is that if you cannot speak, you do not understand. This is very similar to the stigma which the deaf community faced in the past. Society used to say the deaf and the dumb. This meant because they couldn't hear, they couldn't speak. People who are non-speaking, who were labeled as nonverbal, have said that they do not like this term and it has personally hurt them. Therefore, the language has been changed to non-speaking. This means that I can talk and communicate, just not by using words. Many people today who are non-speaking make use of alternative and augmentative communication AAC devices and communicate very effectively. I work at an adult day program, and one day I went into the classroom and I was talking to some students, and I used PEC cards for communication. I had a PEC card, which is a square card with a picture on it. I had two of them. One said nonverbal and one said non-speaking. And I asked each and every student's preference, and they actually told me that they prefer non-speaking. And it was really cool to see. And the professors in the room was very shocked, but they got on board with it right away, which is really cool. The presentation credits are Illinois Partners in Policy Making class for helping me, which is a high impact mission-based consulting and training, and the Illinois Council on Developmental Disabilities for funding partners in policymaking. Any questions?
All right. Thank you so much for this information so far, Kaela. So now all of our participants have an opportunity to ask any questions, gather information, continue learning with and from Kaela. You are welcome to do this one of two ways. Choices are amazing, right? You can either type it into the chat box, we will read it and Kaela will respond, or you can choose to take yourself off of mute, show yourself via video, and ask the question that way. So again, you have some options on how you wish to ask a question. I will just say that it was very interesting, Kaela, when you shared that you had two cards. One said nonverbal and one said non-speaking. And the vast majority of folks chose non-speaking. That is something that I am going to try to remember to use in my conversations. I tend to say people who don't communicate in a way that is easy to understand. I do like non-speaking because we all communicate. I'm going to go ahead and read some of the messages that have come in, if that's okay. We have, thank you for this information. I really appreciate hearing your perspective. Another person, Kaela, this presentation was great. Thank you. I am so glad I had the opportunity to meet you in person in Springfield.
Thank you both. Thank you.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions that they would like to ask? There is plenty of opportunity for you to do that. I will also share that it is interesting that the autistic community is looking at big A autism, culturally autistic. I am familiar with the deaf community, the big D, culturally deaf. So hearing about the autistic community, big A, is a very familiar, not necessarily term, but it's familiar information that can be applied from one community to another.
I thought that's very interesting too, and that we are really, our community, I find, is slowly kind of using that transition, kind of like deaf and blind has already done. So I think it's definitely very similar.
Yes. We have another question. Would it be okay to share the recording with others? This is Christine, who says, absolutely. This recording will be uploaded to the Alliance's YouTube channel. You are welcome to check it out there. You can let other people know to check that out as well. Another comment, this was very interesting. Always good to hear what is new and keep on learning. Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to share
Yes.
this information. Here's a great question. Yes. Have you experienced any resistance to identity first language?
So when I did this presentation, I did um, three of them during my Partners in Policy Making um, graduation. And my third one, I went in somewhere and I did get some resistance. And um, what I kind of say to that is it's not necessarily resistance, but I think it's people trying to understand the perspective that other people are coming from. And this person also went through medical school. So what I was saying to them was different than what they have learned and was taught in medical school for many, many years. So this person I think was trying to grasp a new point of view and was struggling just because they've never heard of it before and it was very, very different than what medical school has taught them.
Thank you for sharing that. That is quite interesting that we learn what we learn when we learn it. And for some of us, that was quite some time ago. And when we know different, perhaps we do different. So we're always open to learning and doing things differently, and especially taking the lead from the community who is sharing. This is our preference. Again, if you have any questions for Kaela, go ahead and type them into the chat box. While you are considering what you might want to ask, I'd like to let everyone know that the next Alliance monthly webinar will be on Tuesday, June 18th. It'll be at 10 a.m. in the morning, and we will be going through how a bill becomes a law in Illinois. Again, the Alliance's next monthly webinar will be Tuesday, June 18th at 10 a.m. Central, and we'll be talking about how a bill becomes a law in Illinois. I don't see any other questions, comments, or considerations coming in. So, Kaela, would you like to close us out?
Yeah. Thank you everybody for coming. If you have more questions or, you know, concerns or anything, you can email me and I will email back. Thank you so much for coming out and listening to my webinar.
All right. And on behalf of the Illinois Self-Advocacy Alliance, Kaela, we thank you for your experience and expertise. And for everyone, keep on speaking up and speaking out.